Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. What an incredible event. I have to say, it's my first time with JLF. And it's been a real learning experience. My first introduction to the founders just a few short months ago here in Boulder, when I learned that actually Jaipur Literature Festival is the largest one in the world. I knew, of course, where Jaipur is. I've been to India 25 times over the years, but to learn that they have 500,000 visitors there every year at that event in Jaipur, and then these other satellite events, such as this one in Boulder, is pretty unbelievable. For those who didn't know, it's the largest literature event in the world. So us being the proud host for the North American event now 5 years running is really quite something. So from my own personal perspective, I had some expectations coming in, but I have to say it's blown all of those way beyond what I was expecting. So this won't be the last time Organic India will be here participating and sponsoring the events. And I have to say, as a new resident to Boulder, I've only been here since I took over the role as CEO in January, so still a new resident. And of course, because of the accent, I get asked a lot of times, so what are you doing here in Boulder? I said, well, I work for Organic India, expecting everybody to say, oh yeah, of course, you know. But we apparently have seemed to have been the best kept secret in Boulder. Certainly not as a brand. People know our lovely teas and supplements and psyllium husk and the likes. But actually, very few people know that we've been in Boulder for 17 years. So that was, from very early on, I was determined to change that perception and make people aware, because we're very proud to be here in Boulder for many reasons. And this has been our home and our US headquarters for all that time. So those of you who've had the chance to go past our stand and hopefully tried our baked goods, did some of you get the chance to do that? Yes? Okay. Good. Little ripple of applause. Yeah, thank you. So we proudly partnered with a lovely new baking company that's emerging here in Boulder that you guys will get to hear more about, a company called Havenly, who do the most incredible gluten-free products. We were only able to showcase a couple of things here today, over the last couple of days, I should say. But having tasted quite a number of these and being a fan of the good tasting gluten-free things, you really keep your eye out for when the big reveal comes. Gluten, at Organic India, when we spend time on product development and so forth, we're always thinking about, what are the health needs of the time, and heart health and heart disease and so forth still is one of the biggest killers in North America and many other parts around the world, of course. And psyllium husk is actually has been noted by the American Heart Foundation as one of the best sources of fiber, and fiber in your diet leads to healthier heart and better cholesterol levels and all this other good stuff. So we developed a new psyllium product, which is in all of our baked goods that we've been sharing over the last couple of days, and it has not only the benefits of psyllium, but it's also got some of our magical herbs to help you with gut health. And it actually has a heat-stable probiotic built into it as well. So for those of you wondering how to get probiotics into your kids' diets and so forth, you can make cookies and whatever you like with this, and it gives you that benefit also. So please check out Havenly when they do finally open their doors officially. And just a point as well on Jaipur Literature Festival and Organic India. We share some common goals. Hopefully some of that came across in the video that our founder spoke about at the rest. We're very much a mission-driven, purpose-driven company, and that's to help nourish mind, body, and soul through the benefit of organic foods and herbs and the benefit of eating healthily, which our distinguished panelists are going to be speaking more about in a few moments. And we just go about it in a different way. Here we're stimulated intellectually and inspired by the incredible books and topics that are discussed here, and we do it via our products and sharing the wisdom of herbs and Ayurveda and teaching people methods perhaps of taking charge of our own health, because it is actually possible through some pretty simple means. So, and lastly, I just wanted to make a comment about the importance of relationships, because I think, in your personal life, business life, when it comes to your health, your relationship to food, or whatever that might be, is essential, and relationships in general. The reason we're actually here at Jaipur Literature Festival, William Dalrymple, whose session you absolutely should not miss this afternoon, which is the final one upstairs in Skyscapes. This William, who's the founder of Jaipur Literature Festival, is a 30-year friend of the chairman of our company, who's also called William, actually. And it was thanks to that relationship that I got an email back in May saying, there's a guy called Suraj coming to Boulder, and there's this thing called Jaipur Literature Festival. You guys should meet, which we did, and then created our own relationship, and then voila, we're here. And then, Organic India's relationship towards its customers, which we're able to, capitalize on through events, and really, enrich that communication, as well as, the relationship with the soil and the food that we eat. Organic India to its farmers, of which we deal with 4,500 on a direct basis. We have over 400 people in our agricultural department in India. We're the only company that deals directly with each and every last farmer that grows magical produce for us in India. And lastly, farm to the table, which I know our panelists are going to speak about in a lot more detail, and the benefits of healthy food in your diet, and how that can improve your health overall. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much, and I'll pass it over to Gabrielle. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before we really get started, I wonder if you are all just swimming in gratitude for this weekend and so many flavors and ideas and people, and I was thinking we could take some breaths together, and I'm going to encourage you to take as deep a breath as you can, partly because when you get excited, at least for me, my energy starts going more and more up here into my head, and I just want to try to stay grounded throughout the end of this amazing conference. So if you just would take some 3 deep breaths with us, and while you do, try to feel your feet. So as you breathe in, we're just going to feel our feet. Okay? Ready? This is too weird. You can just feel your feet. That's not that weird. All right. All right, thank you. So I'll be helping to moderate this panel. I'm Michelle Gabrieloff-Parish. I'm the Assistant Director for Energy and Climate Justice at CU Boulder's Environmental Center. A formal Bold Food Fellow with the U.S. State Department, looking at sustainable urban agriculture in the United States and in Uganda. And also help teach permaculture and ecological design. And so I've been working on healthy food and also food justice. I'm also on the board of Frontline Farming in Denver, which is a food justice organization. So I'm going to give our panelists time to introduce themselves and their work, and then we'll just have a conversation. So since you're next to me, do you want to start us off, Eric?
Sure. So my name is Eric Skokan. My wife, Jill, and I own 2 restaurants in town, the Black Cat and Bramble and Hare. And to supply those restaurants, we have a 425-acre farm just outside of town, certified organic and biodynamic, and we grow almost everything that you see in the restaurant on a nightly basis, irrespective of dinner in January versus June. The lion's share of everything comes from the restaurant.
So now's the time to go.
Well, right now is the time. This is the embarrassment of riches time. The challenge is to figure out what we will not put on the plate because we have so many different things. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Len Tina Lexus, and I'm the culinary director at Cured Boulder, which is on Pearl Street, and I'm a longtime CSA member, actually, of the Black Cat Farm. I was a professional endurance athlete before I became a chef, and a practitioner of yoga and Ayurveda. And my experience in that inspired me to go to culinary school and dive into the culinary world in a different way. And I've spent the majority of my culinary career outside of commercial kitchens, actually, mostly teaching others to cook through content development and recipe development and the curation of experiences in the outdoor and wellness spaces. So I work with large brands to connect athletes and active folks with real food.
Did you mention your upcoming cookbook?
And I'm in the process of writing my first cookbook with Roost Books, actually, on that similar topic. Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful. So maybe we can start just talking about, the topic of this conversation is Earthbound, food to live by. And I thought maybe we could start with what you think are some of the most pressing issues that we face, and also what is inspiring you the most in working in this field and looking at food and agriculture and health. And start with what you think is the most pressing thing and what is the hardest, so that you can end on what's most inspiring you.
Well, the pressing thing for all of us, for me as a farmer, and for all of us here in the room is carbon. We live in a time we are seeing the results of a lifestyle that we have chosen to live for the last 100 years, which I think we're now seeing is starting to cause problems. And we think of, not non-farmers think of carbon in the atmosphere being all about automobiles, and to a large extent it is. But our food choices have driven and the way in which we eat and feed ourselves, whether it's in restaurants or at home, has driven and accelerated this movement of carbon from the earth into the atmosphere. Today, in the U.S., we have less than 50% of the soil organic matter, i.e. carbon, in the soil today than we did before World War II. And every year, soil organic matter nationally decreases. Globally, it decreases. And all of that carbon goes somewhere, and it goes up into the atmosphere. That is certainly the biggest challenge. And for me, it is coming up with growing systems, systems where we can feed everyone here in this room day after day after day. It turns out we all get hungry multiple times a day, so that the need is there. How can we do this in a way that, instead of exacerbating the problem, could potentially repair that problem? Sustainable agriculture, which is very much a buzzword, is sort of this umbrella idea of using agricultural practices to heal the damage that our lifestyle has created. And that is, for me, in many ways, that's the joy. Tinkering with the systems, taking the soil tests, trying it this way, trying it that way, adjusting what we do out in the fields to have the soil in the field in a better place at the end of the year than it was when we got there. And it's a life's work. I'm hoping by the time I retire that I'll know something towards that end. The joy is in the discovery along the way. It's in the little victories along the way, and in many ways, it's inspiring and engaging.
Sort of to piggyback on on your comment, Eric, I read a statistic the other day, something about how 83% of the carbon that we're creating has to do with our food production. So that's the way that the food is being produced typically in a commercial sense, and the way it's transported and the way it's packaged. And I would say that the thing that in my day-to-day work feels most pressing is that in general, I think we're very disconnected from the way that our food is produced and where it's coming from. And so we often hang on, we all want to be, excuse me, let me take a sip of this water so I don't frog my way through. Excuse me. We all want to live healthfully and in harmony with our environment, and we often hinge ourselves on a couple of buzzwords, whether it's organic or sustainable or whatever it is, and we don't sometimes take it a few steps deeper. And the problem that I see most is that we aren't really cooking. We're finding convenient ways to get what we think is the best possible solution into our homes, and that's sometimes disregarding the way that the food is actually coming to us. The most basic example would be purchasing tomatoes in the middle of the winter and making a recipe with tomatoes, when in most places in the United States, tomatoes are not being grown in the middle of the winter. And many people out there don't even know when tomatoes are in season and when we ought to be growing them, and that this is the moment right now to go and shovel them into our bags. So I think that's really, and it all makes sense that we wouldn't be cooking much, because the population of people that I work with, which is really everybody, because whether you're an athlete or somebody who's just quite busy or full, which all of us are, your nutrition is the same, and we all are very strapped for time and resources, no matter where we find ourselves. We don't often make space to cook, and cook often, and cook every day. So I think that's the piece of the puzzle that I am attempting to tackle, is sort of trying to convince everybody that there is space to cook a little bit every day for ourselves, even if it's one thing or three things, maybe, once, a couple times a day. But the thing that I personally find to be the most inspiring is, frankly, farmers like Eric, who are, here in Boulder Valley, we have a cornucopia of things that are available to us that are being sold right around the street, and you can actually subsist as an avid eater, and I take bucket loads of vegetables home from your stand. You can subsist on our farmers market only from May through December, and if you've done a little bit of cooking through the summer, even longer than that, without going to a major grocery store to purchase almost anything. I think that's really inspiring, and to include now farmers here, to include Eric, are planting grain. So literally everything that's in your pantry could come from right here, which significantly reduces your carbon footprint and means that you're getting the best possible produce around. So, yeah, those two things.
Great. Yeah, I wonder how many people do feel like you struggle with cooking for yourself on a daily basis? Okay, not bad. Maybe this is research for you going into the future. So, especially in the introduction, and Eric, you talked about this a little bit, but we've been talking about organic and what this means, when really this is the way people have always grown and harvested food. But the concept of organic seems to be somewhat new and catching on. And, in a lot of the world, people think that organic just means a type of certification, not the way they're already growing their food. So I guess I'm curious what you think is going on in the world of, organic agriculture, regenerative agriculture, and some of these labels. And how important are they to you and to your work or not? And what do you feel like you want to say about them so that people have a sense of how they work?
Well, our farm is certified organic and biodynamic, and but we've been farming for a little over 10 years, and we've been certified organic for 5 years. For 5 years. In the first 5 years, and there's zero change in the first 5 years to the last 5 years, other than we finally completed all the paperwork necessary in order for the certification to happen. And we were busy learning how to farm instead of documenting, right, so that we could be certified afterwards. When all of us sort of close our eyes and we envision what an organic farm looks like, maybe we see a red barn and the chicken running across the yard and the fields and the, and the whatnot. And how we envision farms is, I think, it doesn't match up necessarily with what organic necessarily is. An organic farm could be 10,000 acres. It could be monocrop. It could be massive tractors. It could be entirely imported fertilizers. It could be naturally occurring pesticides. It can be all of that. The big thing is that it's the synthetics, right? It's organic eschews anything that's man-made versus things that are natural. So from my perspective, organic is an absolutely necessary first step, but it isn't the end of the road. Getting to that place that all of us envision is, really the direction I think we need to be going in. So that's a diversified farm, a mixture of different vegetables, grains, things that are always changing and rotating, integrating livestock and animals together. Very, very few, I would say maybe 200 farms, organic farms in the country, and I'm just throwing out a number, integrate animals and vegetables into their operation. All of our grandparents and then our great-grandparents for generations, for thousands of years, as a people, we have integrated animals into food production, into vegetable production, as a way of cycling nutrients, and that went away after World War II. So bringing back the integration, bringing back the diversification, I think that those are all incredibly important parts, and those are the pieces that make farms sustainable, that send us down the regenerative path instead of the extractive path. The problem is they're complicated. You're juggling, instead of just juggling 2 balls at the same time or 3, you're juggling 13 or 16 or 18 or 35 balls at the same time. So it's mentally, challenging. It requires really good record keeping and, and that sort of thing. But in the end, the farms operate in a very durable, sustainable way. When we have bad weather and the tomatoes get killed or whatever, then we have all of these other crops. If the hail comes down and kills the tomatoes, it turns out the hail can't go underground and kill the carrots, right? So the carrots end up surviving even though you lost the tomatoes. So it's built-in crop insurance. That's the vision that I'm hoping that we can, as a group, move farms towards. And it happens when you're at the farmer's market and you develop a relationship with your local farmer and you're purchasing your carrots and so forth. And when you value eating food that's good for you and that food production helping to restore the environment, you're in a very powerful position to be able to say, hey, what are you doing for soil? What are you doing for the soil? What are you doing for the worms? Like, tell me about your growing practices. And picking and choosing the farms that are working towards that end, I think, is really valuable. You'd be surprised at how much power you have when you wag your finger at the farmer's market. When you say, "Hey, soil is important. It's important to me as a consumer. I think you should be doing this." When you're talking with the business owner, believe it or not, they're listening, and it only takes a couple people to make a sea change, happen in how we do it.
Right, it's much harder to wag your finger at General Mills.
Yeah,
and have them
yeah,
listen.
go, do it all, do it all you
So I
want.
want to hear from you if you feel like that leads to, how people are eating and seeing these certifications and making decisions.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that, the certifications do matter sort of the things that I'm thinking about after hearing you speak, Eric, are that I think that pushing that knowledge about the wealth of the farmer's market to everyone is really the most important thing, because it's commercial agriculture is still a really big deal. It's not necessarily feasible at this point in time, I believe, from my, perhaps uninformed standpoint, that those regeneration practices can happen on these small, large-scale farms so long as we continue to demand things at our grocery store that just have a stamp on them at any time of year, becoming more informed and really wanting to know the answers behind where our food is coming from, I think, is the biggest deal. And we could understand what regenerative agriculture means and what sustainable agriculture is and organic farming is. But unless we understand the impact of all of those things really on a very granular level for everybody, it's really important that everybody understand. It sort of, I suppose what I'm trying to say is it starts with us caring and searching for the answers ourselves. Reading whatever it says on the eggs that's like, oh, it's very easy to go like, oh, cool, these are organic eggs, cool, snatch, walk away. Digging a bit deeper. Not sure if that's an exceptional answer, but I really do feel like the more I hear you talk about this, the more I feel like I want to go and ask more questions, even though I feel like I ask a lot of questions at the farmers market. Yeah.
Well, and you two have both led me. I wanted to dive into some of the controversies in food and health and agriculture, and you both have mentioned certain things that get us started. You talked about cost of food at a certain point, and I think a lot of people think that organic and farmers market is beyond their means, and that eating healthy is really a privilege in the U.S. and is more of a sign of affluence than caring about one's health. So how do you all see that? Maybe we'll start with you this time.
Sure. Well, the first thing is I think that the word healthy eating is sort of I don't even know what that means anymore, right? Because a lot of my work happens in the social media space, and if I go to look, I'm scrolling for a hashtag that I might use in helping some of my work to be found, or I'm working with a partner like Whole Foods, say, and we're trying to figure out how it is that we can get these messages to be seen by a larger population. A lot of what we find when you talk about, real food is real fuel for your body ends up being a pill form or some ingredient that's come from like the Amazon, acai is an ingredient that comes from like the Amazon rainforest, and we're like, what a buzzword, isn't this a delicious thing to eat? And even bananas come from like so far away, like, so if that's healthy eating, then I don't want to be doing that. And I do agree with you that oftentimes, what we consider to be healthy and organic food has kind of like a connotation of being the most expensive possible option. But I suppose one of the pieces of nutrition that we don't really look at is what's the emotional impact and the social impact and the economic impact of us making a choice. I keep going back to this tomato example of purchasing tomatoes that are coming from 1,000 miles away, and they're in a little plastic box that's never going to biodegrade. And that's really very, very expensive to all of us. And so I suppose unfortunately, our commercial agriculture systems and the way that we've been able to cheapen our food leads us to believe that that actually is food. Doritos are not a food. Like something that lives in a package that's $1.99 on the gas station shelf, while many populations of people feel that that is the answer, is not an answer that's going to nourish them, and it's not an answer that's going to sustain them or any of us. And so long as we have populations of people that feel that way, we can't really resolve this conflict entirely. But the best news is that farmers markets around have answers to help those that feel less privileged or that are less privileged to gain access to this beautiful food. And also the more that we, folks that have prioritized this in their lives are asking for it, that will naturally drive the cost of it down in a lot of different ways, is at least my hope. Maybe you can speak to that, Eric.
Well, certainly if the organic food, local farmers market, world stays small and niche, It will always be for the well-heeled, and which is unfortunate ultimately. Jill and I grow food, and we cook, and we take care of the people in the restaurant. Like all of the things that we do all revolve around one simple idea. And I like simple ideas because they're easy for me to keep track of, and I'm kind of busy, right? So the simple idea is taking care of people completely in an authentic way. And we do that with food. We do that with service. And we do that in farming practices in the community, right? So, but we don't do that. It feels inauthentic to take care of you, but not you. Right. To take care of you in the dining room, but trash the environment along the way, right? That it's an all of us. It's a holistic taking care of part that we're interested in doing. Towards that end, at the farmers market, for 10 years, we have doubled food access dollars at our farmers market booth. So SNAP and WIC. And these are pre-qualified people of need in our community who come to the farmers market and are able to purchase. Initially, we decided to double these SNAP and WIC dollars at the booth, and to see the joy, to see the stress wash away when they hand us the dollars and then we give them half of them back, and they look confused for a moment, and we say, no, we double your dollars. You can have twice as much, or you can go to another booth and purchase more things. That moment of joy that we see is worth everything. It's an incredibly powerful thing. So now the city of Boulder, thankfully, beautifully, has worked on a grant through the farmers market to double all of the SNAP and WIC dollars at the market. Amazing. An incredibly powerful program directed to the specific people who need it. Jill and I have decided to double those. So we double the double all the time. Partially, thank you. But I have to tell you, I do it largely for very, very selfish reasons. I love making people happy, and that's my little bit of joy, each time. And in many ways, I think it makes it feel okay to charge what we need to charge in the Black Hat in order to pay all of our staff really, really well and keep that thing going. That is the horse that's pulling the whole cart. Keeping the Black Hat financially stable, and we have to charge what we do. And Joe will tell you we don't really make any money at the Black Hat, but it is pulling all of the rest of the things that we do, and creates our ability to help in other ways. In the end, you pull it all together, and it feels to me enriching and wonderful, and I am just so completely thankful to be able to do what I do.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's really the opposite of what we see with most of the food system, which does not exist to make people healthy, does not exist to make people happy, or if so, in a very short-term sort of chemical way. And
I do feel like that's a little seed, though. When one person plants that seed and then we respond to it in that way, that's sort of, I feel like that's really necessary to turn it around.
Right. And imagine how different everything would be if we could sort of restructure what success looks like. So everything that you're saying to me does sound like success. That is a definition of a successful life. It's really beautiful. So how do we extrapolate that and take that out into, a culture that sees success as, making a ton of profit in a very short term at any cost to any community and any person. So we have a little bit of time left before we get to questions from the audience, and I wanted to dive into at least one more controversial topic, though you'll have just like a minute each to respond. And we saw the climate strikes this weekend that were led by youth, and I went to the one in Denver, and I saw a lot of students having conversations and holding signs around environmentalism, the climate, and meat. And so this seems to be something that is, if you want to have a good argument, go onto Facebook and make a post about meat and agriculture. So what is your take? And, for people who care about our ecological systems, meat, no meat, meat in a new way, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, I personally call myself kind of a flexitarian and have for a very long time. If I know the source on the farm where the meat's been grown and that it's been grown in a sustainable way, or caught in a sustainable way, I don't eat very much fish here in Colorado, then I feel okay about that. And my body does ask me to provide protein in that way. Yeah. That's my answer. And for me at least, that's been a very sustainable way for me to live, and it makes me feel good about the food that I'm eating, and it answers a lot of the questions that I might have about my impact.
Yeah. Do we have other flexitarians in the house? You know how to cook vegetarian. You know what it looks like to eat vegetarian, but you throw some meat in there.
Yeah, that
sometimes.
said, a lot of the meals that I make at home are vegetarian or vegan, and even a lot of the food that we prepare at Cured when we go to big events are vegan and vegetarian. But we're not necessarily putting a sign on them that says that. It's just delicious food that's cooked very carefully, and when we offer meat, I know where it's coming from. Yeah.
Right. Thanks, Eric.
Well, the state of meat production in the U.S. right now is just really it's just really sad, for eons we have not raised meat. We have not sustained ourselves like we are doing now for this last half a dozen or so decades, and it very much feels like a dead end. I think in many ways, and when we as a nation prize efficiency, and we do, Americans prize efficiency over quality and over joy, always. That's one of the things that apple pie, efficiency, baseball, like those are the things that we go for. When we do that, we end up with this lowest common denominator, hyper-efficient meat production system, which from the producer's perspective is brilliant, makes lots of sense, but for all of us on the outside of it, we think, what are we doing, right? And it's very possible to raise meat affordably and not trash the environment at the same time. First frost is going to come in a couple of weeks, and the day after the first frost, we'll set up an electric fence around our tomato field, and it will not be tomato time anymore. We won't be selling any more tomatoes. And then we let our hogs into that field, and they'll eat all of the tomatoes in that field, grazing and sleeping and eating and right? And then hogs will move on to the next field that we close down, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And then fast forward 2 years, we'll be growing vegetables in that field again, and the cycle starts all over again. In 10 years, I've purchased a soil amendment one time in 10 years. We do it the old-fashioned way. We cycle nutrients obsessively. I work at it really, really hard. But the animals do that work for us, and they're vital. Animal production on organic farms, on biodynamic farms, is critical. It is an absolutely important, cannot do it sustainably without it piece. And it's always been that way. It's always been that way.
I sort of wonder, and not to throw like another controversy in, but something I think about, and I don't have the answer for this, is what happens to all this beautiful organic farming that we're doing if we really do push for a meat-free diet? And do you think that it's actually sustainable for us to be able to have these systems without, where does the meat go then, and what happens to the animals when they eventually pass away?
Organic farmers who are growing carrots after carrots after carrots after carrots have to import nutrients to grow the carrots, and those nutrients are produced by animals. It's just the phosphorus. Like, yes, you can plant peas for nitrogen, but the phosphorus comes from the animals. You cannot do it without animal manure, except for bat guano. Oh wait, that came from,
Yeah.
or we can harvest from the sea, which is what we do, and wipe out fish stocks, right? But at some point, all the phosphorus, which is vital, we can't grow anything without phosphorus. It all has to originate from animals. It's a key piece.
Right. Well, and I like to look at where we are, and when we started out, it probably would have been wise to give a land acknowledgement, and we're on the land of Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Ute. And I think it's wise to know that so that you can, honor the people, honor the source, and because if you want to know how to live sustainably in a place, you probably should know about that diet. And in this place, that is how people made it, is there was so much buffalo. And this ecology of North America was incredible and so biodiverse and so healthy and thriving. And yes, people were eating meat. But it's such a different relationship with the food and such a different relationship with meat, having it be ritualistic, having it be for survival, having it be very close, whereas we're all very distanced from any of the meat that we are eating when we eat. So that makes a really large difference. It looks like maybe, do we need to turn over? Do we have time for one more controversy? Okay, we're going to do one more controversy, and we could have whole sessions on this. So we're just going to you get like really only 1 minute each on this crazy topic, which is genetically modified organisms. Some people think that science is going to save us, and we're going to extract the heck out of the planet and get all the food that we need with GMOs. And some people think that it's bringing on allergies and health disparities and adding more toxins into the environment. GMOs, 1 minute. You go.
Yeah. What do I even say here? I was listening to an interesting or somewhat provocative conversation the other day on a podcast. I'd have to go back and remind myself of who it was because I was cooking and I was listening and realized that I wanted to go back and revisit. But this author that I was listening to had what she felt to be compelling reasons that we should embrace some genetic modification so that we would be able to sustain heirloom seeds and that sort of thing. To me, that I can't relate to that. Like, maybe it's that the picture that I have in my head of the food that I want to eat doesn't start in a lab anyplace. It just is on a farm with a little red barn and the chicken running across and your cute little pigs running around. I feel like there has to be a better way than that. And this is maybe a horrible thing to say, but I do think that there's some chance that we've maybe made it so bad that it might have to get a little bit worse before it can get better. And I don't feel good about saying that. That's sort of an emotionally hard thing to say, but yeah, I don't feel like that's an option for us. I don't feel like genetically modified organisms are an option.
I can't say that the technology in and of itself, separated from the food and how we sustain ourselves issue. If you just look at the technology, it is what it is, right? It's just like a television or a tractor or whatever. It's how we choose in society to implement that technology, which is the issue. GMO production in the United States has been given GRAS certification, generally regarded as safe, which means that it bypasses pretty much all tests. It's safe, It's just like a tomato. There's no difference. And that's why it's okay, because it's regarded as safe, to splice halibut genes into tomatoes, which has happened. And they were available for public purchase.
Isn't that actually some of like the first genetically modified
The
substances?
Flavor Saver tomato.
The Flavor Saver tomato was, I remember learning about that in college and
Right.
basically being petrified to eat anything.
Right. And we legally have created a framework around GMO where none of us have the ability to legally challenge that. It's regarded as safe. We've backed ourselves into a corner. It's very, very easy to say that humans will misuse this technology. Like, we will make mistakes, and I think we'll regret it. And I think that that's unfortunate.
Yeah, and if we go back to native practices here, people were domesticating and improving plant varieties, which is very different than
That's normal and
GMO.
fine. I
Yeah.
do that on my farm.
Right. I know, I was hoping we could talk about perennial wheat. But I think we have to get to audience questions, so let's do that. And we have someone going around with a microphone that's going to help. Please try to be as brief as possible with your question.
Okay, with the last topic of GMO, as you say, it's there, it's going to be there. How can they justify when everything else has to have a label that tells you what's in that food? How can they justify not having that label?
I don't know. Well, because it's regarded as safe, right?
And
This
only in the
GRAS
US.
certification is what did it. But, you're preaching to the choir. I am right there.
Right. In other countries, they can't do that. In Europe, they certainly cannot. And watch for the GMO project label, which is sort of a consumer choice. No one has to report it, but a lot of companies are moving to let consumers know this was not grown with GMOs.
Great. My question has to do with the microbiome. We have created a recipe called 23 ingredients. So we feed 2 people, your microbiome and you. How much of your work might, from each of you, be involving that, the microbiome?
Quite a bit of my work is actually in the sense that the less that we're eating a large variety of foods and the more that we shy away from, the more that we vilify certain types of foods, the blanket of dairy, the blanket of gluten, these sorts of categories, the less variety we're getting and the more we're drawn towards packaged foods that might provide us with another option. So a lot of my work is in microbiome and how to include those ingredients back into a diet for anybody. Yeah.
So we as a culture tend to be reductionist. I need to eat tomatoes because of the lycopene in the tomatoes, right? That's the reason that they're healthy, right? And it isn't. I mean, it is, but it's not that. It's an all of everything. Eating this
And the combination of things also.
and a combination, right? Ever changing. You eat what's fresh. You eat what's good. You eat what came from your community, and that's always changing. And you have the broadest possible range of different things. You have developed a healthy gut biome. It's just a byproduct of it. It is what happens. But it turns out that when we move towards convenience, microwave burrito, microwave burrito, microwave burrito, microwave burrito, that we are amplifying, we're feeding some parts of our gut biome and not others. We're starving other parts. And it's really the biggest and broadest, it ends up being the healthiest, the least reductive.
Well, also, by eating that way, the microwave burrito on repeat, we're also including a lot of ingredients, depending on where we're buying our food from, that aren't necessarily food or that our body doesn't really recognize as nutrients in the first place. So it basically trips up the microbiome in general and says, like, well, what do I even do with this? And your body doesn't necessarily get rid of it, and it might store it in some strange not strange, different part. But something else that I'm thinking as you're talking is that we often eat from a checklist, no matter what that checklist is, it's like, am I getting protein, am I getting vegetables, or am I just eating in general, did I even remember to eat? A lot of my work is revisiting the 6 tastes in Ayurveda, which we actually all crave. As an example, we sort of have, again, vilified this craving for something sweet, and we think that it has to do with sugar. I don't eat very much refined sugar myself, but I still crave sweet things, and that's because sweet tastes actually calm us and calm our nervous systems down, and there are a variety of plant foods that do that. But we have sort of lost that science and that connection to like, hey, by the way, carrots are quite sweet and beets are very sweet, and eating a beautiful bowl of like roasted carrots would be soothing to us as well. And our bodies know how to naturally ask for those things, but we've sort of stopped listening as we're listening to all the other noise. So,
Absolutely. I wanted to say something else about the microbiome. Oh, and just say that this is also actually a mental health issue, a physical health issue, and even a justice issue, because certain communities are given access to only some of these foods. And I find that as pollution gets worse and as climate change takes hold, it actually makes for people to be a little bit more violent, a little bit lower IQs. A lot of CO2 in an environment will actually lower people's IQs. I actually have an allergy to wheat, not to gluten. I'm starting to say that everywhere I go. I'm actually not allergic to gluten. I am allergic to wheat, and have had a few accidents in the past month where I ate some on accident. And part of what happens is I get mad. So yes, I also have to run to the bathroom, and I also end up with a migraine, but I also first am like just ornery. So I think that's something to think about too, is that as we lose this health, actually a lot of our complex problems become harder to solve because we can't think through them as well. We had another question.
Oh, I was going to say 2 things. One, if you know somebody that might be gluten intolerant, the book, I think it's the Dummies book on that one is actually an excellent read because they tell you what the symptoms are that you might not recognize. And being allergic to, or having smoke bother you is actually, according to that book, that you might be having an intolerance to gluten. And the other thing that I was going to say is the other day, last week, I heard a lady on NPR radio from the UK, and she was talking about what they're going to be doing over there because they think they're going to lose their topsoil, the nutrient value, in like 3 generations. And what their plan is to try, one of the plans to try to fix that is they're going to try to re-wildlife the areas. So they're going to take fences and they're going to build them in large areas, and they're going to bring in some of the wildlife, like the bisons and other stuff that they haven't had over there in a while. Sorry. So that's their method, and they're reintroducing animals, and they're going to let the trees grow for like 20 or 50 years, and then they'll be able to farm that area again. And so that's their plan.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you. We have a question in front here.
Yeah, and that leads also to agroforestry, and even some of what you're doing, I think, with perennials and annuals growing together is a way of integrating those ecological systems back into farmed systems. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Agreed. We have a big field of asparagus, a big 2.5, 3 acre grassy field, and we've planted asparagus in rows in it, and we let the sheep come through and graze. And for someone who doesn't know there's asparagus there, and there's a lot of asparagus there, it looks like just a perennial pasture. The sheep come through, they graze. This pasture will be there permanently. The asparagus will live for 25 or so years, and we get our harvest. We supply the restaurant, but it's really something that's ultimately improving the soil over time. We get just enough. It's not the most efficient asparagus farm in the country. However, there's almost no cost to it. Right?
So, listening to what everyone is saying, I really do feel that the traditional ways of eating are exactly what you are describing. You know, in my home still, we buy fresh produce every day. We have our meat cut every day for that day, and eat it up, and it's done by the end of the day. Unfortunately, in India, they use a lot of chemical fertilizer. They do have an increasingly organic thing. But I think the diets that they are in traditional cultures are perfectly calibrated for this kind of health. Yeah. You know, you have, in my home, I'm a meat eater, I'm a flexitarian like you. We eat meat in the evening in our dinner meal. Our lunches and our breakfasts are completely vegetarian. So you can do that. You can have very inexpensive protein from eating dal and rice. Yeah. You know, I do not understand how we lost our moorings in the way we did.
Yeah, well, different cultures too, right? I mean, the foods that your body might be craving in India with the weather, you know, Ayurveda is the study of the weather in your body, right? So the weather in our bodies here is a little bit different, but I totally agree. I think that going back to a traditionalist look at agriculture and the way that we eat and the way that we cook makes a lot of sense.
You know, it was developed over millennia to satisfy us and fulfill those things that we need.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think there are very modern ways that we can embrace that and make it available to us without having it be a whole day cooking process or, you know, whatever, yeah.
Well, it seems, if you remember, you know, the history of sort of food deficiency diseases, beriberi and so forth, when we realized humankind has survived and thrived with traditional diets for eons. And it wasn't until about 100 years ago when we started identifying a few isolated issues with vitamin C deficiency or thiamine or whatever it was. And then all of a sudden we thought, oh, wait a minute, our last 4,000 years of existence was all for naught. We should have been following scientists who've solved 4 nutrition deficiency diseases, right? And that's not the case. We fooled ourselves. We should have simply solved those 4 issues and then moved on, right?
All right, so please give a really big round of applause for Lentine and Eric and the work that they do.
Thank you to all 3 of you. Thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, I would like to thank our sponsors. This session was sponsored by Organic India, but I would like to read you the list of sponsors that we made this festival possible. So let's thank Z Entertainment, Boulder Library Foundation, the City of Boulder, Boulder Public Library, National Endowments for the Arts, Motwani Jadeja Foundation, Tampa Bay Literary Society, Organic India, Anchor Point Foundation, Bhakti Chai, Colorado Creative Industries, Consulate General of Canada in Denver, Community Foundation serving Boulder County, Shambhala Publication, Highland City Club, Hilton Garden Hotel Boulder, CBS 4 Denver, Brock Media, KGNU, Denver Post, Daily Camera, Boulder Weekly, CPR, Boulder Bookstore, America's Latino Eco Festival, BMOCA, Boddicker Theater and Dairy Arts Center, Boulder Chamber of Commerce, Boulder County Arts Alliance, Boulder International Film Festival, Boulder Ollie, Boulder Rotary Peace Builders, Boulder Valley School Districts, Boulder Writers Alliance, Center for Asian Studies, CU Boulder, Colorado Talking Book Library, Dean of Arts and Sciences, CU Boulder, EcoCycle, Eldorado Water, E-Town, Honest Tea, I Have a Dream Foundation Boulder, International Business Circle, Lighthouse Writers Workshop, Kim and Jake's Bakery, Lucky's Market, Maya Productions, Ozo Coffee, Right Relationship, Chitulia, Tibet Kitchen, and Multimedia Audiovisuals. Thank you again for